When I was at UCLA, all of my teammates were serious students. Well, not all of them, but most of them. And that was because Coach Wooden expected that. He wanted us to graduate. He let us know in the recruiting process that he wanted us to go to class and do well. He was just like a parent, a strict parent. He wanted us to do well. He was not someone that was just there to exploit us as athletes. And I have a lot of respect and undying love for Coach Wooden for that reason. He was not just some cynical opportunist. He really tried to show his the love and caring that he had for the people that played sports for him. That was very important. Geez, there's so many things that I learned from Coach Wooden that had nothing to do with sports. Coach Wooden really made us think about things beyond just playing basketball. That was very, very wonderful thing to have coming from the head coach. I started out as an English major, and Coach Wooden, I could talk to him about the fine points of the English language, whether to use colon or semicolon, when to use parentheses, what was appropriate, like or as, those types of things that have to do that any English major can tell you are confusing and can be kind of daunting at times. It had nothing to do with sports. So for that reason alone, I really thought that I was in the right place and dealing with the right situation. I think the turbulence of the 60s affected everybody, no matter where they were. The Vietnam War and the divide that happened, people lining up on either side of that. And then it also, the 60s, the mid and late 60s, really were the culmination of the civil rights movement. And all those things affected me on the campus at UCLA. But I thought I was in a very positive environment there. The people in and around UCLA seemed to have the right ideas on those matters, and I didn't ever feel that I'd made a bad choice. I declined the invitation to go to the Olympics because I didn't feel that the Olympics situation was reality. Here we have this whole appearance of racial harmony on the American Olympic team when things weren't that harmonious here. In addition to that, I had a very good summer job that paid me a pretty good salary, and I needed that to tide me over for the school year, and I couldn't do both things. So I figured I better go with what was going to benefit my life as opposed to benefiting the Olympic movement, which I saw as very hypocritical. The gentleman that was in charge of the U.S. Olympic team, Avery Brundage, to me, was a very controversial figure. And at some point, I believe in the 30s, he had supported the Nazi Party at one point. It's not somebody I wanted to work for. I didn't want to deal with him or the Olympics. So it was pretty easy for me to make my choice. I took a lot of heat for that. But I had good reasons not to go. I thought it would be better if I didn't go, as opposed to going and being a problem for everybody and being a disruptive element in there. I let them do their thing, and I was going to do my thing. I think my achievements on the basketball court just came from a whole lot of things coming together in one place, in one person. I was able to learn the game from some of the best teachers, and I had particular skills that translated well to playing the game. So the knowledge that I had and the physical gifts that I had gave me the opportunity to be a very good player, and I was able to take advantage of that. In order to win a championship, you have to have a lot of parts that fit together, and you have to have the opportunity to win. So in order to win, you really have to have a lot of things happen the right way. You have to have good leadership, coaching, and you have to have a talented team that can come together as a unit. And I think the reason that UCLA's teams did so well was that Coach Wooden's ideas on unity and team play really were cutting edge and the best. He taught those elements of the game the best of any coach in the country. And you combine that with talented athletes, and you're going to have a winning program. The first day that you go to play for Coach Wooden, he tells you about how to put your socks on. And the reason that he does that is because his system requires that you do everything on the run. You don't jog through things. You have to run full speed. And the wear and tear on your feet is immediate and intense. And if your socks aren't on right, if you have like a ridge and that you're running over in your sock, you're gonna get a blister, and then you won't be able to practice. And if you don't practice for Coach Wooden, you don't play. So he was telling everybody how to survive his system and get through it without coming up with blisters on their feet. I think life in the NBA was pretty easy because you're getting paid to do something that you'd done for free prior to that. You get paid pretty well, and that's all that you have to do. So all other distractions are on the periphery, and you can concentrate just completely on basketball. And if you have a good foundation in the game, you can do very well. There are disappointments for any competitive athlete because you can't win all the time. Coach Wooden taught us this. He taught us that you can only come out and give your best effort. That's all you can do. The outcome is not determined by anything that you have control over. The only thing you have control over is your effort and then the effort of your group, your team. And when you put together a good effort consistently, you have a chance to win. And everybody wants to win, but there's only one team that can win it all, and you have to accept that. And as long as you put your best effort out there, you should be satisfied with that and not be down on yourself. I thought I had a really great childhood. I can't complain about it. I had both parents that cared about me and nurtured and supported me and taught me about discipline. They didn't let that slide. I don't consider myself spoiled. And, I did the normal things that kids did in New York in the 50s. I went to the circus and the rodeo and, went to the library and played baseball and stickball and swam, visited my grandmother's in Brooklyn and, just the normal things, family and friends, and the magic of television. That was the earliest days of television, kind of fascinating time. I consider myself to be a pretty good kid. I didn't get in a lot of trouble. My parents were disciplinarians. They didn't allow me a whole lot of leeway in terms of the freedom to act crazy. I didn't get that. I was a pretty good student, yeah. And my mom wanted to emphasized that school was a very important part of my life, and she wanted me to do well, and I took that message to heart. The things that interested me the most growing up, I was a baseball fan. I wanted to play baseball. I couldn't be a cowboy because I did not live in the West, so baseball was the refuge there. I had heroes. Jackie Robinson was a big hero in my home, and of course all the musicians. My dad was an avid musician. He played. He thought that music was the pinnacle of artistic statement, and so Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Nat King Cole and Sarah Vaughan and Billy Eckstine. They were always on the turntable, and they were icons. I first stepped on the basketball court at PS 52 in Upper Manhattan in Inwood, and I remember it was during the summer when they would have the schools open for daytime activities for kids, and how I struggled just getting the ball up to the rim level. I couldn't do it at first. I had to heave the ball underhanded just to get it up at the rim. I didn't do well at all. I started to get pretty good in the 7th and 8th grades. 8th grade, I dunked a ball in a game. That was pretty amazing in those days. I guess it'd be amazing now. 8th graders don't, by and large, have that kind of skill. But for me, I think it was just the issue. I was tall enough, and I'd been trying it long enough. I finally got to the point where I could do it. Well, at Holy Providence School, I learned some tough lessons there. The other kids didn't appreciate the fact that I was a good student, and I was kind of singled out as an egghead nerd kind of person. The only good thing that happened to me there was I got to play on the basketball team. That was 4th grade. That was the first year that I played basketball. And basketball was kind of like a refuge for me. But I couldn't wait to get out of there. I realized basketball was going to be an important part of my life probably somewhere 7th or 8th grade when I started getting recruited to go to high school. In order to go to Catholic school, high school in New York, there was tuition, and already I had offers to go to high school and not have to pay tuition. So at that point, basketball started paying some bills. And I knew that to go to college, the same process would take place, and that would be another set of bills that I didn't have to pay that basketball would take care of. And I also knew that professional athletes made pretty good salaries. So it started to be something that started to loom on the horizon there, so to speak. I had to work hard to become a good basketball player. You can just be tall and go out there and go through the motions, and you won't do very well. And high school basketball in New York is a blood sport. It's a serious game. It's not something that's like a casual pastime. You better be at your best. It's almost like the whole world is watching. And kids in New York, high school athletics, by and large, are very competitive. So from the very earliest, I was in a very competitive atmosphere, and you want to be at your best. You just don't want to go through the motions. You want to distinguish yourself. I was 17 years old and got to participate in a program, the Harlem Youth Project, where they taught the kids in Harlem how to make Harlem a better place. Dr. John Clark really figured out a way to teach the kids in Harlem how to think about the future and what they could do to make Harlem a better place. And they had a number of workshops to try and get the kids involved in thinking about the future and what positive things they could do to contribute to life in Harlem. And in order to do that, they had to know what Harlem was about. And being involved in the journalism workshop, we had to write about those things and put them in front of the participants in the program. So that required that I go and learn about the history of Harlem. And that just opened my whole world up in terms of what had gone on before me, particularly the Harlem Renaissance. Because of the influence of my dad, the musician, I knew all about the musical aspects of it, but I didn't know very much about the other aspects of the Harlem Renaissance, and that really filled in what happened and why, and it made me very proud, and it made me a student of Black history. I always was going to go to college. That was a goal that my parents identified for me probably in 5th or 6th grade. I was thinking about, geez, where am I going to go to college? I recently found my grade school album, and you write certain things in there about your future, and at that point I wrote when in the space there, your favorite college, and at that point I wrote UCLA. That surprised me to find that out. I always thought that happened a little bit later after seeing UCLA do so well in college basketball. But as early as the 8th grade, I had picked the school that I wanted to go to. I chose UCLA because my last 2 years in high school, UCLA won the NCAA tournament. And also, earlier, I remember seeing the Ed Sullivan Show when Rayford Johnson was on the Ed Sullivan Show. And I knew Rayford Johnson was a world-class athlete, but he was not on the Ed Sullivan Show as an athlete. He was on the Ed Sullivan Show as the president of the student body at UCLA. And I was very impressed with that they appreciated him for more than his athletic ability. That said a lot about the attitudes at UCLA, and that it would be a good place to go to school. Also, there was a guy who played on the Knicks, Willie Knowles, who went to UCLA, and he spoke highly of it, and he spoke highly of Coach Wooden. And all in all, it all seemed to make sense. I got a chance to meet Coach Wooden that year on my recruiting trip to UCLA, and that more or less solidified it. My parents, he came to New York and spoke to my parents, and again, they were impressed. They thought I'd be in good hands, and that was that. My first year at UCLA was tough just because all of the negatives that you just dismissed when you think about leaving home, they popped up. And it was at times a lonely kind of situation. But the challenge of going to school and playing basketball at a higher level still than I had left, really it was something that it was very challenging. But I thought that I was up to the challenge, and things worked out very well. I had self-doubts when I was a freshman in high school. I was 14 years old and not very mature. And there were a few incidents my freshman year, but I learned in a very competitive environment. I told you earlier that the high school environment that I played in was very intense, and I learned how to be stoic and go out and compete. And my high school coach was very good at working with young people. He never berated anybody or embarrassed them if they went out and played hard and stuck to our team plan. And I was very fortunate to have good coaching like that both in high school and then again in college with Coach Wooden. My very first high school game, I was 14 years old, and we went to play a team in Brooklyn and got whipped. There was one player on the team that was doing globetrotter tricks against our team. It was pretty bad. And after the game, I came into the locker room, and I felt so bad about my performance, I started crying. And at that time, I was 14 years old, and at that age, you can be either more mature than your years or less mature in certain ways. And in this particular set of circumstances, I was less mature. I was a lot closer to being 12 years old than I was to being 16 years old. So I'm crying, and I remember I looked up, and all of the other guys in the locker room were looking at me like I had just landed from Mars, and crying at a time like that, like a little kid. And my maturity level just did a leap of maybe 4 or 5 years at that point. And I realized that I had to leave that childish emotion and self-pity behind and learn how to compete and get with it. And it was a pretty intense moment in my life, and one that I refer to a lot in terms of focus and determination. The racial atmosphere in the early 60s was not a pleasant thing to endure, because America has a way of not looking at or acknowledging racial attitudes, and at other times taking the attitude that things will change later. And of course, things have to change now if there's going to be any progress now. So the impatience in the communities that felt racial oppression was very, very intense. The whole idea of freedom now emerged in the 60s, and it was something that I had to debate with my peers almost on a daily basis. I think that people started to get the idea that certain things did have to change if America was going to be the place that it put itself up to be. People like Dr. King and Malcolm X really intensified the debate and made people deal with the issues. And that went across the board. I don't think any group or any individuals really got a chance to not participate. You had to participate. These things affected you, no matter who you are or where you are. I handle criticism by understanding that you can't please everybody, and you should live according to your own standards, especially if they are reasonable, as long as you know that you've done the best that you can in whatever circumstances that you're in, and you're honest. You should be able to handle any criticism that arises, because you understand within yourself that you're not perfect. You can't please everybody, and if you understand that, you can move on. I think after a considerable amount of time in the public eye, you understand that that's just the way that things are. That people are going to criticize you, and you can't please everybody. And as long as you do the best you can in an honest effort, you should be all right. My interest in Islam started when I was a freshman at UCLA, and I got the opportunity to read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And it really made me understand that there was a lot more to monotheism than what I knew, being raised as a Roman Catholic. And I found in Islam that I certainly had a limited view of what monotheism was about, and it made me curious enough to read the Quran and see that it probably was something that I needed to investigate more completely. And I was won over by the arguments. The fact that the Roman Catholic Church was greatly invested in the slave trade did not help me want to remain Catholic. And because of that, I changed my affiliation. I think Islam has given me a moral foundation. It gave me a way of trying to balance your own personal ambitions, what you want and need in the world, with some type of morality, and a way of viewing what life is about. It certainly doesn't help at this point, now that there's so many problems with the Islamic world. But I think those have to do with politics and the Islamic world's reaction to colonialism and being exploited a lot more so than it really is based on religious belief, because all of the religions that come from Abraham are basically have the same message. Not very much difference if you can study it objectively. That's hard to do in this day and age when there's so much politics and nationalism and resentment for things that have gone on centuries ago. It's kind of hard to overcome. It's been very tough to be a Muslim in America ever since 9/11. Just the fact that Muslims were responsible for such an atrocity. How do you explain that? People aren't really willing to listen without saying that all Muslims feel that way, or there's something inherent in Islam that encourages people to go out and indiscriminately murder. It's not the case, but that's what's happened. Off the basketball court, I think that making the world a better place, making my environment a better place, my community, my country, I think that's something that all people should aspire to. If you improve yourself, if you improve your environment, you're contributing to the good of all people. And I think that's a worthy thing for people to aspire to. Well, for me, the Harlem Renaissance epitomizes the pinnacle of the efforts of Black people to contribute to American life. I think that the aspirations of the participants in the Harlem Renaissance were such that we should know about it. I think especially young Black people today should use that as a template for what they can do with their lives. They can use it as a means to see what their aspirations can bring forward. The poetry of Langston Hughes, the music of Duke Ellington, the social commentary of people like W.E.B. Du Bois. All of these things are things that made a difference in America and made a difference in Black life. And I think that's something that our young people should learn about. Well, jazz to me is important because it's an expression of joy. It's an expression of people who even though they were living in oppressive circumstances, were not going to take the negativity as the last statement on those circumstances, that things could change, and that hope certainly was part of the process, and that change was even more than being possible, inevitable. Well, certainly music helps you to do things with more joy, and just what you learn about timing and harmony and your reaction to the choices that the people around you make, which is part of the jazz experience. All those things can help an athlete. There's a certain group dynamic that happens with a jazz band, and it's the same thing that happens on the playing field. What the group is trying to do and their efforts to achieving that goal, that's something that's shared. And it's something that the team has to be aware of collectively. And they have to act as a unit. They can't just do it all as individuals. And that cohesion of the unit makes for great team play, and it also makes for great music. I certainly enjoyed seeing, let's say, when the Brooklyn Dodgers won the World Series in 1955. That was a very special moment. I'll never forget that. Playing on the city championship team for 3 years in a row in high school, that was very special for me, something I enjoyed. Doing well at UCLA, both as a student and an athlete, that was very important to me. Doing well as a professional basketball player, and being consistent and being able to make the all-star team and be the most valuable player in the league. That's something I'm proud of as a personal achievement. My greatest achievement, I think, has been being a successful parent, sending my kids to school. They're all college grads. They understand who they are, where they are, and have made a good statement with their lives. I think that has been the best thing that I've done. I think the autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley really inspired me to know more and to emulate the positive growth that Malcolm X went through. He started out on a very negative path. He was a thief and someone involved in the underworld, and he grew out of that. His exposure to the teachings of the Nation of Islam made him want to change. And then when he saw that the Nation of Islam had some problems, he put that behind him, and through Islam, Orthodox Islam, he found a better path. And he never stopped trying to improve himself and increase his knowledge. I think that's a great example for anyone. I think the statement that knowledge is power is a very succinct way of getting the message across, that you have to know what's right and you have to pursue what's right. And the only way you can know and do these things is to acquire knowledge. Flailing around in the dark does not help anyone. I think America has the challenge ahead of it of making the promise of the Constitution real for everyone. Everyone needs to have the opportunity to succeed. It's a very difficult thing to make happen. A lot of societies have tried that and failed. And I think we have to continually reassess and reinvent how we approach the promise of the American dream. If there's one problem I could solve, I would want to deal with the issue of equality, equality of opportunity. The only way that I see that we can make that a reality is to educate everyone, to make the educational system work for all segments of society, the rich and the poor. That has not happened, and we have the problems that we have based mainly on the lack of opportunity for people who don't get the education that they need to contribute to society. I think all prominent people, no matter what field they're in, athletic or not, I think all prominent people have a responsibility to show others how to get things done. The whole idea of sharing your knowledge and allowing other people to see how to succeed, I think that's very important. I think that works for everyone. And it's my hope that that becomes the norm for America. I measure success basically by seeing how far a person can go in whatever field that they choose. If you choose to write, can you get something published that people will want to read? I think that's a pretty straightforward example of someone attempting and succeeding at an effort. For other people, having the ability to go out and support themselves, if they can do that, and then at some point get to the point where they can raise and support a family, I think that's another great achievement. Doesn't always have to be spectacular stuff. It just has to be living a normal life. I think seeing one of my books in print has given me as much joy and sense of achievement as winning an NBA championship. Although I don't get the notoriety for my books that I have gotten as an athlete, it still gives me great joy to know that I can contribute to American life something significant. Well, it's significant to me, and possibly the people who pick up my books and read them get some fulfillment out of it. I think that, to me, is very meaningful, and it gives me a lot of joy. Well, no, I think that what I achieved as an athlete is really wonderful, but limited. And I think that the books I've written, after I'm dead, people can still read them. I stopped contributing anything on the basketball court. I do a little bit of coaching, but the books I've written are able to spread knowledge and inform people, and that will continue after I passed on. I think that really makes me feel special in ways that my achievements in sports have not. Mark Twain is a hero of mine, and I've written some things that might last in the same way that Huck Finn has lasted. It has that possibility, that special thing for me. I think that my legacy is the fact that I was able to do well as an athlete and as a scholar. I'm very proud of that, and I hope people can understand and learn from the things that I've written long after I'm gone. I hope that's what happens. I remember the first book I wrote, some 25 years ago, It's very difficult. Just being public with private information is my autobiography. I remember like 6 weeks before it was getting ready to come out on the book stands, I wanted them to stop the project because I said, I can't be public like that. And with every publication since then, the process has gotten easier, and I think the books have improved. So I don't think that's tough, because if you have an idea of something meaningful to communicate, you can move forward on that. You might not be successful in communicating what you want to communicate, but at least you have an idea of something that needs to be said, or something that you think should be said. And I think you go from there.
I'm not gonna stop getting